Oh, thanks. You remember that too? Wow, great. Well, we're going to continue exploring the Heart Sutra, but you don't need my big old handout. I noticed somebody was organized and brought it. Good work. We're going to focus a little bit tonight on one of the characters and a little less on the text because it matters. You know, it matters in a story who the characters are, who's doing the talking, who's doing the interacting, who's expressing what. And if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, we're the little chant we did just now, the Great Wisdom Beyond Wisdom Heart Sutra, is a core text in this school of Buddhism, chanted every day all over the world. And it's also fairly cryptic and weird, so we're going to spend some time unpacking it. But before that, got a short subject for us. We'll see if this works. We'll see if the tech streak continues. Hi, online people. Now there's two of me. And on the screen over there, too. I'm going to try to share a little short video. This is an experiment. Oops. No, I did that wrong. Hold on. This is a short video. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that'd be better, yeah. I'll put it in the chat. Was that right, Chris? It sounds muffled. Is it any better now? I mean, that was before we had this set up.
It's a little bit quiet, but and a little bit muffled. I mean,
We can't hear
maybe
Chris,
it's
so I don't know
me.
if we'll
If
hear our
Katie and
sound.
Candace can hear you well, then it could just be me and my laptop.
So I'll leave. You can share it. Okay, that's working. Did you do share sound? There's a little tick box for that. Well, you must have done because we're hearing it.
A lot of people have been
Okay,
thinking
why don't you
about,
pause
is
it
this
and
something
ask
that's,
them if they can hear?
out there, somebody bring it to.
Could you guys hear the video?
We
No.
couldn't see anything, or I could barely hear it just from your microphone, I think.
Okay, so when you when you do share, Aiden, share to the left there. There's a tick box for share sound on the right. Well, hold on, don't hit it. To the right, to the right, to the right. Middle of the right, a little lower. Share options. Yeah, get that one.
And I can't see anything that you're projecting onto this. Oh, here we go. There, that's great. Thank you.
Huh. Never seen that before. I wonder why it's tiny. Oh, maybe it's the two screen thing? Oh, maybe it's just, yeah, try show meeting. Oh, it's small still. Well, maybe I need to let this go. I meant to come early and test it. That would have been smart. Oh, no, it's better. And we can see them small, so maybe they'll be able to tell us if it's not working. uh, Thanks, Echo. You recognize the situation? Oh, good, good, good. Okay. Yay.
to us, but not really. Peace is something that we have to find within, right? Without mindfulness, I don't
Okay,
think
so
we'd be
bring it
able to
back to the
find that
beginning
kind of peace. Like many
and
talk.
pause it. I'll give a little background. So you've probably heard this story or may watch these guys already, but in case you haven't, this is the group of 13 or 14 Theravada monks who did a peace walk from Texas to Washington D.C. Have you heard about this? Yeah. So this is a nice little video some TV news place produced with some images of their journey and while interviewing the leader of the group, which is Venerable Panakaro here. And so they walked for 108 days, 25 miles a day. They moved at a good clip. And as they went along, more and more people heard about this and turned out to see them and help them and support them, and they became a bit of a sensation. And they inspired us too. So we've now had 2 peace walks. And part of why I wanted to bring this up is because on Sunday, some of you were there, we had actually the largest Red Cedar event in our history. More than 100 people came to walk with us in peace. So this is an amazing thing, huh? So I thought you'd enjoy hearing a little bit about his thoughts about why he did this and what his hopes are. Uh, and he's a Vietnamese person who came to America actually to be an engineer, and then realized that wasn't the life for him, and ordained as a monk. And it turns out this was the second big walk he's done. So he did a warm up. I read. He and an even bigger group of monks walked across India to go to sacred sites and stuff like that. And that one they did, apparently somehow they did that one unsupported. This one ended up quite well supported. And you'll notice when they show him a little more, yeah, see to the right of his robe there? That kind of looks like police badges. That's what it is. So all the police departments started giving him honorary badges. So it's really quite amazing. All right, let's see if we can enjoy this little video. Turn up the volume pretty good.
A lot of people have been thinking about peace is something that, out there, somebody bring it to us, but not really. Peace is something that we have to find within, right? Without mindfulness, I don't think we'd be able to find that kind of peace. Like many talk that I ask people, have your day been peaceful at all? Maybe some people will have peace for a couple minutes, but not the whole day, not for hours. Because this is something very easy to be fragile and very hard to get, but very easy to be fragile, right? And so to practice this, they definitely have to have a mindfulness practicing in order for them to have peace. And this is something that requires us to put more effort into it. And this is everyday life practicing. Right at the beginning, when I took on this journey, usually I just think that when we walk, hopefully that there are some people who stop by, slow down for us, and then look back within to find some peace. That's all I expect, but not millions and millions of people like this. This is something that is really overwhelming for me. Every state have a different kind of support, but everywhere we go, I believe that the government officials, police department, sheriff, EMS, fire department, SWAT team, and everything, and of course, civilians all coming out just because of the same goals and mission, peace, and then showing love and support. I think it's amazing. We grateful enough to have a lot of donations, a lot of food from different communities offering us every day. And so Asian food, American food, Mexican food, we have all kind of food every day. And snacks too, a lot of fruits, right? And then of course when we walk in the cold, we don't drink that much of water because it's not sweat. We need to sweat, but it's not, so we kind of drink a little, and that is the reason, one of the reasons why we lack of fluids in our body. Some of our venerable monks haven't seen snow before, and so this is their first experience. And of course, this is something, you know, Asia, we are not very strong for the cold, and so it's very difficult for our venerable monks. A lot of us are sick because of the freezing temperatures. So, but we are good overall with this weather, with the snow. It's different experience. Yeah, everywhere we go, travel through each town, each county, each city, the police department, sheriff, EMS, and fire department, all those law enforcement departments escorted us throughout the day. And after that, they honored to put it on to show support and appreciation. Also, it means that they will walk with us in this spirit as well. Yeah, so for us, it's very honored. For me, my feelings is not really happy. It's not really sad. It's because I know when I walk, I see so many people coming out. Of course, that makes me happy because my mission is really reach out to people. And at the same time, I feel like all the people are suffer deeply. That's why they're coming out that much, right? So that kind of make me thinking about it, not really happy about it. Of course, I understand that this is a nature. Everybody have to go through all these suffering things, and well, I just hope that my message and my technique of practicing would help the people to stand up again and have a peaceful day, peaceful life. My message that I share every time, that every morning when you wake up, the first thing you should do is just make your bed nice and neat, and after that, just get a piece of paper and pen, write out the statement, say, today is going to be my peaceful day. After that, read it over and over with our eyes, and then read it out loud with our mouth to tell the universe that today is going to be my peaceful day, so that no one can mess it up. Only ourselves can mess it up. If you can do that every day and work through it mindfully every throughout your day, do one thing at a time. Do not multitask anymore. And if we can do that, your day will be at peace. You will have a peaceful day, and that is how we work through our life to have a peaceful life.
With the overwhelming support that you've received, do you think the country has fully embraced this work for peace?
I believe so. I believe that this country and around the world, it's not just in the United States, but around the world, they truly believe. I think that there are people believe that this is something that's possible to make it happen, and I have seen that. From Texas to here, I have seen peace bloom and flourish. So I do think that it will one day.
Tim?
Will be flourish throughout this universe. Because I think that this mission, for me personally, whenever I decide something, I would just do it. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I still do it. And this is the goal, and this is something that I think is bring a lot of benefits to the people. So I will not stop, will not give up. My message is wanted to share everywhere, and will not exclude anybody. For everybody in this world, for human to need to listen and need to take on action to change their life. And so for Washington, D.C., I truly hope that a lot more people will join this mission to walk with us every single day of their life.
Okay, we can turn that off.
On August 22nd, I told you
Now it says you are screen sharing once you stopped it. Oh. Well, sorry to the folks on Zoom if that didn't work quite right. There is a link in the chat there, so if you click that, you will have it queued up to watch later. It's just a little 6-minute video about the walk for peace. Are you at least hearing me now? Is this working? Okay, well that's good. Okay, we'll have to figure out how to do such high-tech things with our high-tech system. So, what's the Heart Sutra have to do with any of this? It seems like these guys really got out there and did something out in the world, and we did our own version of it on Sunday, and we'll do it again on Saturday if you're interested in coming. We meet at the Waypoint Park where the acid ball is at 1:30 on Saturday to walk around downtown a couple miles in silence. Well, I think this is really relevant, actually, to study these wisdom teachings. That Prajna Paramita and emptiness and other teachings like all 6 of the paramitas we've been looking at on Sunday morning aren't just a bit of distraction or hiding out in some ancient culture. They're about the nature of our lives and the nature of reality. And that as we appreciate these teachings and bring them into our hearts, things shift for us. We actually become more available for the world, not less. This confusing term emptiness, which we'll be looking at in lots of different ways for a while, it's about openness, it's about spaciousness. It's about the kind of adaptability that Venerable Panakaro was talking about there. It's about receiving everything without boundaries or walls around it. So the way it's expressed in the Heart Sutra is really densely packed and a little odd sounding, so we'll unpack it. But it's not just some old dusty thing. It's about the way our mind makes boxes, right, and makes walls. And those boxes and walls and beliefs and ideas and values and personality types and me-nesses seem so real and so solid and so, like, fixed. But they aren't. We know they aren't. And so these are teachings and practices to help us not just convince ourselves of that in our heads, but really feel it. And one of the things I find interesting about listening to Venerable Panakaro and his colleagues there is they don't talk about it, but they're responding to something really frightening, right? They're responding to hatred and divisiveness. They don't mention it. And that's a serious and frightening thing. But these teachings help us to see that even the most frightening thing is impermanent, is not stable, is not solid in the way it seems to be. Hatred or the goodness, all those people praying with the monks. And I've seen other videos where they like put a drone up or something and it's like really intense, like they're walking into a town and like thousands of people are pouring in, You could kind of get a little sense of it in that video. That's also arising. Things arise according to conditions. So frightening things arise according to conditions that support frightening things. The conditions are complex. We know when we look at cause and effect in the world, we look at karma, that there's always more going on than we can see, which is also implied in these teachings on emptiness and spaciousness. So we're humble, and we don't think we know what all the causes and conditions are that are creating this scary situation in the world that they're responding to with their walk of peace, with our walks of peace, with our practice, with their practice. But even though we can never fully understand what's going on, I think we can agree that the Buddha was right. That at the root of it are serious inner poisons that we can work with. he formulated the most central issues as three, the famous three poisons: greed or desire, hatred and anger, and ignorance, misunderstanding the way things are. And that these manifest in so many different ways. But we also experience and can see and can know that even a small shift, even a small shift in the mind, and everything changes. Everything's different. So the emptiness teachings help us to see how fluid it actually is. Because one of the things it's empty of is solidity, is permanence, is fixedness. So this long, odd list in the Heart Sutra, which we'll unpack starting next week for sure, is trying to point this out to us. And even says that even the things we see are not the way we think they are exactly. They too are empty in those ways. Another thing interesting about this particular monk who was speaking, besides that he didn't grow up in a Buddhist, his family was probably Buddhist, but he didn't grow up with the expectation of ordaining, like many of them ordained quite young. He had a career as an engineer and then came to it later. He's in his 40s now. But not only did he organize these big walks, but he's also organizing a building project. It's called the Dhamma Sitya project. And it's to make a giant marble stupa, a big monument, that will house the Buddhist teachings in multiple languages. So that doesn't seem quite as practical or out in the world, right? It seems very religious. And I suspect he doesn't see that activity as any different from the goodness of doing this long walk out in the public eye, to also raise money to build at some monastery somewhere that probably none of us will likely see, maybe we will, a monument to the teachings, that this too helps the world. So there's a lot of ways we can respond, right, to this world. Lots of different kinds of good work we can do. And that we don't have to feel defeated and overwhelmed by it all, although it may be defeating and overwhelming at the same time. And that these wisdom teachings really help us to have a broader view. And maybe it actually is good that they don't seem that practical. Like, what? We sit around here and we do nothing at all, How does that help? But somehow it's good to invest some of our energy into something that's not so obviously practical, because we can feel deeper dimensions of it and not just get lost in what's going to fix this and what's going to help that. Because we need a deeper kind of fixing and helping than the kinds of fixing and helping we can actually think about and conceive. And I think we felt that a little bit on Sunday in our little version of the Peace Walk here. 2.5 miles instead of 2,100, but we did it. The people from lots of different communities came. I'm sure quite a few of them had no meditation experience. Some certainly did. And we gave the briefest of introductions to what we were doing. And we just started walking, in silence with a little bell. Echo and Mari were ringing the bells. And when time we got to the end, you could really see that everyone was deeply moved by this. That something had happened. Something had changed. For them and people we ran into. There's a whole nother story I could tell about that. We ran into a few interesting people. And so, but why, What did we learn? We don't know. So back to the Heart Sutra. Before the version in our chant book, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, there's an introduction that's not in our version. And it's like a frame story. It's what was happening when these words that are in our version appeared in the world. Here's the frame story. Thus have I heard at one time. The Buddha was dwelling at Rajagriha on Vulture Peak, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. Let's say there are nuns there too, for sure. At that time, the Buddha was immersed in a concentration, a deep meditation, called perception of the profound. At the same time, the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, the Mahasattva, the great being, was moving in the deep course of the perfection of wisdom, practicing deeply the perfection of wisdom. And here's where ours begins. And Avalokitesvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, saw the five aggregates, the components of our being, are empty of inherent existence. So he saw that. And actually, our sutra hasn't quite started yet. And then, through the Buddha's might, a monk who was there, the Venerable Shariputra, asked the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara a question. How should a son or daughter of good family train who wishes to practice this deep perfection of wisdom, who wishes to understand this? And then our sutra launches from there. The rest of the sutra is Avalokitesvara's answer. So other times I've taught this sutra and heard it taught, usually a point is made about this, that this particular bodhisattva is the one doing the speaking, not the Buddha, and not the bodhisattva of wisdom who's called Manjushri. This is the bodhisattva of compassion. Bodhisattva here is like a sort of super being who is completely and deeply immersed in that quality, like an ultimate expression of that quality, ultimate expression of wisdom, the ultimate expression of compassion. So this one is the ultimate expression of compassion. And yet he or she, we'll talk about the gendering in a minute, is the one given this job, offered this opportunity by the Buddha to speak about the deep wisdom of emptiness. So anyway, when you teach this, you usually mention that, and you say, oh, isn't that cool? So it's actually about compassion, and then you launch into all the nitty-gritty details. But I thought we would linger tonight on who this Avalokitesvara is, instead of going right into the sutra. So Avalokitesvara is a Sanskrit name, sometimes called Avalokita, a little bit shorter version. And like everything in Buddhism, since it came through multiple cultures, there's multiple different names. It gets confusing. So the Chinese translated Avalokitesvara as Guanxuyin, but they more often used a shorter version, Guanyin, which is the same as Avalokita. So Guanyin, Avalokita, Avalokitesvara. And then the Japanese version, which used the exact same Chinese characters, but they say them differently. Here, this Bodhisattva, the long version is Kanzeon for Avalokitesvara, or Kanon for Avalokita. So Kanon, Guanyin, Kanzeon, Avalokitesvara, all the same character. One little gotcha, because all this stuff had to get translated into English, is, as you know, Chinese is not written with an alphabet. So they had to figure out how to convert the Chinese sounds to the English alphabet, the Roman alphabet. So the first whack they took at it, they used K for the beginning of this word, the character Guan. But actually K turned out to be a bad pick. It actually sounds like G, like in goat or gate. So it's Guanyin. But unfortunately you may see it written with a K in English. So you have to ignore the K or pretend it's a G. Oops, Actually, that was done by Western scholars, Dr. Wade and Dr. Giles. I don't know how they messed that one up, but they did. The modern system was created by the Chinese government. It's called Pinyin, but it also has different problems. It's just hard to turn one language into another language. The sounds are different, Chinese sounds different from English. You've ever heard somebody talking Chinese? It's very different. So originally, Avalokitesvara was gendered as a male in India, pretty consistently. And where did this being come from? Did he or she have a mom and a dad, or what's going on? No, this is a more super duper being than that. Avalokita, it turns out, emerged from the eye of Amitabha Buddha. So it emerged, disappeared out of the Buddha's eye. And eyes are a powerful organ, right? They're what see clearly. So when we normally talk about the Buddha, we're talking about actually just one particular Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. And this is the most recently manifested Buddha in our age who did appear in a human body. And different schools of Buddhism talk about our Buddha as more or less human or more or less, supernatural. But none of them really actually say it was just a person who was good at meditation. There's something much more special and amazing about Buddhas, even if they appeared in a human body for some years. It's actually a sort of Western secular humanist idea to say, oh, it's just a person who's really great at meditation. Because we don't always like the religious stuff. But I think it has real value, But the Buddha that Avalokita emerged from is full-on religious Buddha. Celestial Buddha, didn't need a human body whatsoever. Amitabha Buddha reigns over this magical land called the Pure Land, like a heavenly land, and there's long descriptions of what it's like, these amazing trees, and smells good, and everything's just gorgeous, It's a good place to be. He was some kind of king at one point, but not an ordinary king, amazing, magical kind of king. And there are whole Buddhist schools that just focus on this Buddha. Schools usually called Pure Land schools, because it's about how do I end up in this pure land, how do I get to this beautiful paradise, like a heaven. And one of the main practices there is just to chant the Buddha's name, homage to that Buddha. In Japanese, it's one of the versions is Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. If you're a Pure Land Japanese Buddhist, you probably chant that millions of times in your lifetime if you're devout. And I'm sure it changes you. It's like Zazen changes us. Doesn't matter what you believe in the end, actually. We find Zazen a little easier because it sounds scientific, and there is science around meditation. It does do things to our brains and hearts. But it also is no different from any other practice, I think. So it's a big deal that Avalokitesvara emerged from the eye of Amitabha Buddha. That's like a high source, It's a great birth. This is a powerful, powerful being. And Avalokitesvara's quality is that he or she, the name literally means something like hearer of the cries of the world. This is a being who's completely 1000% every second focused on everybody's well-being, who loves everybody and wants everybody to be well, no matter what. And it's also said that the great bodhisattvas could, when they felt like it, just become Buddhas, but they don't want to, because they have work to do in the world. And the Avalokitesvara's work is saving beings. One time, Avalokitesvara was, open to the suffering in the world, and we like to close down, right? It's hard to take in the suffering in the world. We can take a little, and then we're like, time for Netflix, right, or whatever. But Avalokitesvara doesn't do that, Somehow her training is such that they just don't need to do that. But it was still really hard to take in suffering. So one time, Avalokitesvara was so overwhelmed by the suffering that, I'll say he, because it was early in the cycle here, his head actually exploded, like literally, blew into 10 pieces, because it was just too much suffering. We can relate, right? And Amitabha Buddha, the parent in a way, could see this from his celestial place. And he swooped down to help, and he turned each of those 10 pieces of Avalokitesvara's head into a face, and kind of glued them back together. So now Avalokitesvara has 10 faces, and to make sure it all worked right, Amitabha Buddha put somehow a duplicate of his head on top to kind of direct the show. So you sometimes see statues of Avalokitesvara with a bunch of faces and a little head on top. So that's why. And another thing that happened is Avalokitesvara has so much to do that she can also spontaneously have a lot more arms. And there's also depictions of Avalokitesvara with 1,000 arms. Have you seen those? 1,000 arms. Sometimes in each hand is a different object, which are different tools for helping people with their suffering. So I'm not going to attempt more screen shares because the last one was a flop, but you should Google images Guanyin, images Avalokitesvara. I'll put some on the website too with the talk. There's many, many different images. When Avalokitesvara went to Tibet, they called him Chenrezig, and he was definitely stayed male. But Chenrezig shed 2 tears, crying for the suffering beings in Tibet. And those tears became another version called Tara. So that's where Tara comes from, if you've heard of Tara. And Tara is always depicted as a really lovely female figure. And she usually has a particular, this way, mudra, which I can explain later if there's time. So you also see another version called Tara. And one Tara is blue, I don't know why. The other Tara is white. Blue Tara is super active, she's out there doing stuff. White Tara is like her counterpart, who just hangs in meditation, sending healing energy through practice in that way. When this being made it to China, they realized that this was a female being. And mostly Avalokita, now Guanyin, has been mostly female ever since. And they have a reason why. So there's a story. So it's time for a little story. This is a story of a young woman named Miao Shan. And you'll see why the story is relevant when we get to the end. So let's enjoy a little story time. It's a fable, Long ago there lived a cruel king named Miao Zhuang. So in Asian names the last name's first. So Miao Shan is the character we're going to meet, and her father is named Miao Zhuang. Miao is the family name. Miao Zhuang had 3 daughters, but his youngest, Miao Shan, was different from the others. While her sisters relished the luxuries of the court, Miao Shan spent her days in prayer and meditation. When the king ordered her to marry a wealthy man to secure his political power, she refused, stating she would only marry if that ended the sufferings of the world. Infuriated, the king ordered her to perform back-breaking labor in the palace gardens, hoping to break her spirit, get her into luxuries. When that failed, he begrudgingly allowed her to enter a Buddhist monastery. But he secretly ordered the monks to give her the worst chores. And so the animals and the gods helped her. They could see what a devoted nun she was. The birds brought her food. The dragons dug a well for her so she could continue her devotions. So it wasn't working. Her father, the king, could not break her spirit. Driven to madness by her persistence, the king ordered the monastery burned to the ground. So this guy had some issues, While hundreds of monks did perish, Miao Shan survived, protected by her purity. She couldn't be burned up in the fire. So the king then ordered her execution. He was that pissed off. But when the executioner struck her with the sword, the blade shattered. When he tried to use the spear, it broke into pieces. Eventually realizing she had to fulfill her destiny, Miao Shan allowed herself to be suffocated so she could descend into the underworld. But upon entering the underworld hells, her presence was so radiant and so full of compassion that the dark realm itself began to transform into a paradise. And the king of hell, fearing his realm, his hell realm, was going to get messed up by this pious being, sent her back to the living, Get out of here. You're too good for this place. And so then she was able to leave because the king thought she was dead, I guess. And she went to a mountain called Fragrant Mountain, where she practiced meditation day and night, practicing beautifully and deeply. So now she's off in seclusion. Maybe now it's okay. Some years later, King Miao Zhuang fell deathly ill with a mysterious skin disease that no doctor could cure. And a wandering monk came, who later we find out was actually Miao Shan in disguise. But a monk came and said, "Only a medicine the only thing that can cure you is a terrible disease. The only thing that will help is medicine made from the eyes and arms of one who is out with medicine made from the eyes and arms of one who is without anger. That's what can save you. But the king was like, well, how am I going to find someone like that? Everybody's angry, That's what he thought. And the monk told him there was a hermit on Fragrant Mountain who was like that. So the king's messengers went off to the mountain, to Fragrant Mountain, and there they found the hermit, who of course was the daughter, Miao Shan, and told her what was going on. And so she willingly plucked out her eyes and severed her arms for the medicine, offering them to the messengers without a shred of resentment. And the medicine worked instantly. So once recovered, the king traveled to the mountain to thank his benefactor. And there he saw that the blind, armless hermit was his daughter. And he fell to the floor. He finally woke up to his anger. He fell to the floor in a state of total repentance, weeping for his cruelty. How could you have done such a thing? At that moment, cue the special effects. At that moment, the earth shook and a divine light filled the sky. Miaoshan was transformed into her true form, the 1,000-armed, 1,000-eyed Guanyin. She became Avalokitesvara. Her many limbs and eyes appeared so she would always be able to reach out to help everybody in pain and able to see whatever was needed doing in all the worlds. Sometimes the eyes are depicted on her palms too. Of course, she forgave her father, showing that true compassion shows no boundaries for even those who have caused us harm. So that's why Guanyin in China is female. She's really Miaoshan transformed through her incredible beneficence. She popped into becoming a bodhisattva. So it'd be easy to write this story off, probably. Kind of quaint, kind of weird, kind of gross, or violent. But maybe it's good to reflect on these kind of stories, Because we have all the qualities in this story within us, don't we? We too can be jealous and controlling, like the king. I mean, he's an extreme case, but we have that in us. We too can be lazy and compliant, like Miaoshan's sisters, who were happy to just hang out in the lap of luxury. We can be distracted. We can also be devoted to practice and goodness, like Miaoshan embodied and exemplified. And you can also see the echo of the Buddha story here, right? The palace, the luxuries, eventually rejecting them. Although, interestingly, the authors of this story were confident enough to make Miaoshan even better than the Buddha. Even as a kid, she didn't go along with all the luxury stuff that the young Prince Siddhartha did before he became the Buddha. She was never seduced. And then the crux of the story is a really powerful challenge to us, isn't it? Can you be compassionate and kind with someone who's harmed you? In fact, could you give them everything? Right? Could you give them everything, as she did? So it's also a really beautiful story in its funny, fable way. So, but it's also easy for us to stay a little bit at arm's length. So I got another story for you. Hopefully there's just enough time for this. There's a really interesting Western pioneer in Buddhism. There's a number of them. It's fun to learn about them over the years. This is someone I'm just learning about now named John Blofeld. I have a book of his, which is called Bodhisattva of Compassion. It's a whole book about this bodhisattva. John Blofeld was born in 1913 in England, Englishman. And at that time, very little was known in the West about Buddhism. You couldn't go to the bookstore and get a book about Buddhism in 1913, or, 1923 when he was 10 years old and could read books. But somehow he ran into a little statue of Buddha somewhere. And he'd never seen anything like that before. And it moved him so deeply as a child that he ended up pretty much devoting his life to Buddhism, this guy, John Blofeld. So that's kind of wild, you know. This can happen to us, right? We can be so inspired it changes our life in a moment. In a moment. He ended up dropping out of college and trying to find a place where Buddhism was practiced, and he went to China. And so he's in China in his early 20s. It's the 1930s, before the Chinese Revolution, so a lot happened over the course of his lifetime in Europe and Asia. You know, all the wars and stuff going on. We think we have it bad now, right? This is stable compared to that, you know, very stable. And he must have kept journals and notes and stuff. And later in his life, towards the end of his life, he died in 76, I think, 1976. So he lived a good long life. He wrote this book about the Bodhisattva of compassion, including stories from his youth as a young man in China. So I want to read you this story. And I might go a little bit over. I hope you're okay, but it's a really interesting story. I think it's worth listening to. He is sort of post-Victorian, so his language is a little flowery, so hang in there. Quite soon after my arrival in China, while staying in a monastery nestled among clumps of lychee trees on the sunny side of a minor sacred mountain, I heard that Guanyin's birthday was going to be celebrated that evening at a neighboring temple over which she presided. So at sunset I set off in that direction. By the time I arrived, night had fallen. Scudding clouds obscured the moon, but peach-shaped lanterns suspended from the temple gateway's elegantly curving roof cast a pool of crimson light that could be seen from the distance. And of course this is all candles and oil lamps, right? Beyond lay a courtyard thronged with worshippers, whose faces were illumined by the rays of perhaps 100 candles streaming through the shrine room's flung open doors. Most were lay people, but a sprinkling of bald pates showed that there were some monks and nuns from neighboring monasteries among them. All were craning their heads towards the shrine, where Guanyin's beautiful statue rose behind a lavishly carved and gilded altar, which held innumerable more candlesticks, a great bronze incense tripod, and an array of porcelain vessels piled with offerings of fruit and flowers. No animal flesh or cups of wine were to be seen here, for even the peasants, he has a little bias, even the peasants had some inkling of the difference between Guanyin and the more gluttonous local deities. Besides, the keepers of the shrine would have rejected such offerings as impure and displeasing to the Bodhisattva. So huge crowd, offerings, candles. The night air, drenched with mingled perfumes of burning sandalwood and jasmine and champak flowers, quivered as the mallet thudded on a large hollowed wood block known as the wooden fish drum, like that one right there. So they're chanting. Its throb was punctuated by the clang and tinkle of bronze and silver instruments used to mark the rhythm of the chant, and the same words, Namu Tazu Tape Guanyin Hi Pusa, Namu Tau Papte Guanyin Pusa, something like that. Homage to the great Guanyin Bodhisattva were chanted over and over and over again. The ardor of those taking part and the frequent subtle changes in rhythm dispelled the monotony, so that the music lifted me into a realm of beauty and enchantment. Myself being taller than the wiry southerners pressed about me, I had an unobstructed view. The Bodhisattva was depicted as a gracious young lady with smoothly rounded cheeks and chin, sitting informally on a rock-like throne, one knee raised so high that the elegant little slipper peeped out from beneath her robe. The other hand toyed with a willow sprig, and the other held a vase of sweet dew, symbolizing the nectar of compassion. To either side, wrought on a smaller scale, stood her attendants, Shan Sai, the smiling boy, and Lung Nu, the dragon maiden, so she's from the Lotus Sutra, holding a giant pearl. The statues were elegant and beautiful, and I wondered where they'd come from. Presently a gust of wind sent the incense smoke billowing upwards in heavy clouds, and momentarily blurred the Bodhisattva's features, creating the illusion of a living being whose expression now altered and took on unimaginable beauty. As though chiding my churlishness, my skepticism in the matter of her costume, She seemed to fix me in the eye and gently shake her head. But I was aware this was no miracle, but I was nevertheless entranced, and tried hard to believe that the goddess had taken notice of me. What is more, there seemed to hover just beyond the threshold of my mind a teasing recollection of something or someone greatly loved, but faded from my memory. The effect was so poignant I wanted to laugh and cry, and I am convinced that it was this elusive recollection rather than the trick wrought by the incense smoke that produced what seemed like a magical effect. In that moment I began to conceive a reverence for this compassionate one, which far from fading with the years was destined to intensify, although for a long time it remained no more than a pleasant whimsy. In those days I had not the wisdom to reconcile devotion with the knowledge that deities are not just deities. So he was kind of like on the fence there. What does this mean? I was too moved to pay much attention to what followed. No doubt there were invocations and readings and many rituals. And to this day I still recall most my pleasure in the cool night air as I walked away from this temple back to the monastery where I was staying. And I indulged in the poetic fantasy that the goddess had wished to remind me of something important to my happiness. Such a mood is not difficult to sustain while strolling by moonlight on the slopes of a mountain where immortal beings have been worshipped since before the dawn of history. There was a part of my mind which told me I was being absurd, and I put up strenuous resistance, being loath to return to the ugly world of the everyday, even in those days. And having disposed of my cavilling logic, my mind soared again, leading me in a state bordering on ecstasy. I had a foretaste of wisdom born of full realization that only mind is real somehow, and the demons of duality were temporarily vanquished so that it became possible to entertain simultaneously two opposing facets of truth. Back at the monastery, while waiting for the sleepy porter to admit me, I became aware of a delicious fragrance which I supposed to be of supernatural origin, till I looked up and saw the gateway was hung with the boughs of a tree called in Chinese Ye Lai Xiang, night fragrance. The scene was just beautiful. But then noticing the lamps were still glimmering in the deserted shrine hall, rather than go to bed, I felt a sudden impulse to enter and make my way around behind the main Buddha statues, where it was customary in Chinese monasteries to house the statue of Guanyin. I had never looked upon her in this monastery before. And there she sat, standing upon a shelf about level with my chest. It was an image of fine bronze, some 3 feet high, with the right hand raised in benediction, the elongated eyes half closed in contemplative bliss, the stumps of votive candles guttered at her feet, whereas the incense sticks lit in her honor had all burnt down to the stubs. It seemed sad for a moment that the deities have to endure the stale order, once the incense goes out. I found myself speaking to her, which I was surprised by. I whispered, "Compassionate one, be pleased to speak and convince me of your reality." How foolish this must sound, and how ashamed I should be to write of it were it not for the sequel, for what happened next. Even with the words upon my lips, I reflected that a sane man should know better than attempt to hold a conversation with a statue. Yet perhaps I had some excuse, for apart from being in a special state of mind, I had recently spent much time in the company of Chinese Buddhists who, despite being men of obvious good sense and education, would have found nothing surprising about such conduct as talking to statues. But as it turned out, no justification was needed, for the plain truth is that the statue answered me at once, saying, "Look not for my reality in the realm of appearance or in emptiness. Seek it with your mind. There only it resides." The statue said to him, "Look not for my reality in the realm of appearances or in emptiness. Seek it in your own mind. There only it resides. I wish I could make the story even more extraordinary by affirming that the bronze lips moved, that the beautifully molded throat gave forth melodious sounds, but that was not so. No sound or movement stirred the silence. But the enigmatic words entered my consciousness directly, as thought forms, so palpably that not even sound itself could have made the effect more electrifying, or more precise, or more clear. It's hard to believe that at the time, when my knowledge of Mahayana Buddhism was so slight that I could even summon such a pronouncement from within myself, I didn't even know what that first sentence meant. I felt sure I had received an intimation from Guanyin herself, and that Guanyin exists, to the extent that the word exists describes her subtle nature. My experience was not imaginary. Such intuitive perceptions are too direct, too penetrating, to be mistaken for ordinary imaginings. Yet for years I hesitated to speak of it, except to my Chinese friends who did understand its nature. But now I've come to recognize that no good purpose is served by concealing marvels just because people nowadays are apt to disbelieve. In truth, such a marvel is not magical to those who recognize mind's power. And he goes on, he's a pretty wordy guy. So no, I just thought you'd enjoy that story. Like, here's a skeptical English guy, pretty excited about Buddhism for sure, but with a Western education like we have. And he hears this message from a statue, So just an encouragement to us, I think, like not to be so sure that it's just a symbol or just an idea or just some other cultural thing or, useful as an allegory or, a metaphor. But maybe there's something a lot more real that we can encounter and experience from these great beings of bodhisattvas and Buddhas. Do I sound a little bit crazy? Good. Okay, I've gone on a little long. So let's chant. But keep an ear out for Guanyin. She may have something to tell us. And on your way out, actually, before you go home, be sure and pay her a little visit. We have a Chinese Guanyin in Cloud Hall. That's who's on the altar there. And maybe she'll talk to you if you